Hey everyone, this is Andrew and Bryan Lee from Wisconsin, and you are listening to That 70s Pod. That 70s Pod you can find on YouTube every week when you subscribe. We upload new episodes every midweek. And this week we dove into TV 2 weeks ago. We did a two-part episode of TV, and there is a specific name that was synonymous with TV in the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc. that I didn't get to bring up. But first of all, we are here in 2024, Thanksgiving in the rearview mirror, and we have the holidays coming right around the corner. I got to eat. I got to watch some football. I got to watch the parade, which was really fun. I know we touched on that last week's episode, um, but we're going to dive in today, which is now we're in December. Brian, how was your Thanksgiving? And was there any 70s memories or anything that you forgot to add for that last week's episode?
Well, if I thought of something, I've forgotten about it now. And my Thanksgiving last week was uh, um, my daughter, your sister, came out for a few hours, and we shared appetizers, pizza rolls, taquitos, bagel bites. She made my favorite hot dish, or some people call it a casserole, and that was about it. She brought a pumpkin pie that she bought at the store, and we didn't do anything real fancy schmancy. Didn't watch any football games or anything like that. Well, my daughter doesn't like football, so yeah, didn't very untraditional Thanksgiving. Just kind of a day to relax a little bit with one of my kids, and that was it.
And traditional is something that we talk about here, obviously reminiscent about memories, and Thanksgiving is very traditional of a holiday, as is Christmas, which is coming around the corner. Well, we will do some sort of Christmas episode because I know there's Christmas TV specials and primetime hours and stuff like that. As mentioned, we did a TV episode 2 weeks ago, and I asked you about entertainment tonight, award shows, the news, because I want to talk about other type of TV shows. I want to ask how sports were done on TVs back then. Don't think it's maybe other than the technology. I don't think it's that much different what we see in sports now. But I always heard growing up that there was two names synonymous when it comes to television. Everybody knew them, but when you saw them on TV, everybody watched. Way, way, way back in the day was Elvis Presley. Elvis had, great singer, good voice, but they wouldn't like show his hips, or they wouldn't show like from the waist down because that was deemed inappropriate for TV at the time. And I also heard that, later on in 60s and 70s, this guy named Evel Knievel showed up, who was very much a daredevil, don't try this at home type deal. But when he was on TV, you were watching. Today we're talking about Evel Knievel, that 70s pod. What year of your life do you remember first hearing about the phenomenon of Mr. Evel Knievel?
Well, it was in the early 70s, and I think the reason I knew about it was because my brother would watch weird stuff on TV. There used to be a Saturday afternoon program, Andrew, on ABC, and it was called ABC's Wide World of Sports. Um, and they would have anything from the Globetrotters playing basketball to polo in Britain, to cricket, to, I mean, any weird thing that you can think of that would be considered a sport, they would show on this program on Saturday afternoons. And again, it was called ABC's Wide World of Sports. And it was a big deal. And it was fun to watch, but then it got kind of boring after a while. But they featured this guy named Evel Knievel one time, and showed what crazy things this guy would do with a motorcycle. And basically he was, to I guess the best way to put it was, he was an entertainer, he was a performer, but he was classified as what they called a daredevil. And a daredevil is somebody who takes unnecessary risk to to accomplish a goal, or accomplish a feat of that nobody had ever heard of before or seen before. And Evel Knievel did a lot of this sort of thing. He became a millionaire because of it, because the major networks wanted to televise these jumps that he would do, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. There was toys of Evel Knievel, and and I'll explain more about who Evel Knievel is and what he did in just a moment here. Um, and plus, since he rode a motorcycle, since he did most of these stunts with a motorcycle, Harley Davidson, of course, made a lot of bucks on the name of Evel Knievel. So he made a lot of money in endorsements, Andrew, and he made a lot of money with his daredevil antics, which included jumping over cars, buses. He tried to jump a canyon, and of course, let's not forget the time he jumped over a pool of sharks. And we're going to talk about all of those things on today's program. So don't go away, because this is, I guess, a tribute program to the very different performer that dominated the 70s. His name was Evel Knievel.
Evel Knievel is very intense. We talked to him a few moments ago before he came out of the van. And his total concentration now is getting that bike off the approach ramp and onto the landing ramp. And he's not hesitating. He'll go.
So going to Evel Knievel, yeah, I know we're going to talk about like obviously that's not his real name. It's some guy from like Ohio, I believe, or Cleveland or something like that. Um, and we're going to go in topics of what he did, how he became the thing. But obviously, this show is focused on you and your perspective of the '70s. So I'm going to ask you this right off the bat: did this intrigue you right away? Were you a fan of Evel Knievel, or was it stupid to you?
Um, kind of a little of both, because what I saw this guy do, and I think the first time I ever saw him um, do a jump, Andrew, was when and I don't remember what year it was, but he decided that he was going to jump the fountains in front of Caesar's Palace in Nevada. And if you've ever seen, most people have seen it on TV, some have seen it in person, where in front of Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada, there are these huge fountains, and I think it stretches 140 feet, something like that. And Evel Knievel decided he was going to jump this fountain, and he did clear the fountain, actually shot through some of the water that was coming up in the air from the fountain. And but it didn't go well for him, as when he went up the ramp, all of these jumps featured some kind of constructed ramp. So he went up this ramp, went over the very high fountain, and he landed on the other side. But when the back wheel hit the ramp on the other side of the fountain, it kind of bounced and shot Evel Knievel off the bike in midair. He did a somersault and came down, and basically it looked like he landed on the back of his head, but it was more like he landed on his shoulders. But he just kept bouncing, and the bike, I think, kind of rolled on him. The bike kept going, and Evel Knievel was bouncing like a rag doll. And I think he suffered like 40 broken bones, if I remember right. And and well, that might have been a different time, but he was laid up for a very long time, and I just thought, man, why would somebody do this for a living? And he basically became a millionaire because of this jump. But he was in the hospital for a very long time. Very lucky that he didn't get killed doing this. But if you ever get a chance to look it up on YouTube, Evel Knievel jumping over the fountains of Caesar Palace, you'll see that when after he cleared the jump, that the impact of landing on the other side of the ramp shot him off the bike, and like I said, he looked like a rag doll just bouncing around on the ground. And he didn't even look like a real person. It looked like a dummy just bouncing around, but it was a real person. And how that guy survived that and went on to do other things is absolutely incredible.
So the Caesar Palace jump, is that the first thing you ever saw of him? Like his first stint?
That was the first thing I ever saw of him, but he started way before that. In 1967, um, he was doing a jump, I think in Los Angeles. I don't remember where it was, where he broke his left hip, he broke his femur, broke his ankle, broke his pelvis, broke both hands, both wrists, but um, he he made a lot of money because of that jump, and again he cleared the jump. I don't remember what he jumped that time, if it was cars or barrels or what it was, but when he landed, it didn't go very well for him. And this is the thing that people remember about Evel Knievel, Andrew, which is kind of weird, is he did 275. I looked this up. He did 275 ramp to ramp motorcycle jumps, and he was successful on 260 of them. But the 15 that didn't turn out so well are the ones that people remember, where he got very hurt and broke a lot of bones in the process.
Okay, so like obviously this was like a live thing, right? Because if you want to watch live TV nowadays, it's like a presidential like speech, a sports game like a championship game, or like maybe the news, I guess, or like a award show. The only thing I ever saw live, like tune in Thursday for ABC, was in 2019, where this guy was doing a tightrope walking over some volcano. I forgot what volcano it was, but that could erupt any moment. And so this was a live broadcast on the ABC network in 2019 of like, yeah, I mean, you can't miss this like type deal. I take it that started from Evel Knievel of like, you have your weekly programs and everything, but like special attraction tonight, Evel Knievel attempts, to jump over school buses or something like that. So was that like a can't miss thing that everybody talked about in school?
Well, that's a really good question, Andrew, because once Evel Knievel became more known and people knew who he was, they knew he was a daredevil. Um, he started out by doing wheelies and riding his motorcycle through walls of fire. I mean, that's how Evel Knievel started. That was how his daredevil career had started. Um, I mean, way back when. I mean, he was born in 1938, so I'm not really sure when he exactly got into doing the Daredevil thing. I know that he had a Honda dealership and had trouble promoting Japanese imports because back in the 50s and 60s, nobody wanted a Japanese anything, motorcycle, car, whatever. So his Honda dealership folded up. And then he started working at a shop where he learned how to start doing these motorcycle stunts. Back then, there used to be something called motocross. So that's how he got started, Andrew, by doing wheelies and, like I said, riding his motorcycle through a wall of fire. And he also participated in rodeos. He did ski jumping. So he was, besides motorcycling, he was just kind of a daredevil in general. And you mentioned in 2019 how you watched somebody walk a tightrope across a volcano. Well, that's a daredevil. That's what a daredevil does. It doesn't have to be motorcycles. It could be anything that nobody else would think about doing because it's kind of stupid, you know. But that's how daredevils do things, and that's why they do things to get notoriety, to get endorsements, to make money. I mean, you could even say the famous guy whose name I can't remember offhand that does the skateboarding. Help me out with that. Is that Tony Hawk? Uh, you could even say that he's a daredevil.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, he does all these weird things with a skateboard, and even did it in the Olympics. And and so you can say that, you know, any type of activity like that where your body isn't protected, you're not wearing a football helmet, or you're not wearing a cup, or you're not wearing, you know, all the gear that a hockey player would wear for protection. I mean, that's a daredevil. That's what a daredevil is doing weird stuff and not being protected. So when Evel Knievel started doing this stuff and became well known, whenever there might be, this is a really long answer to your question, Andrew. Yeah, there would be things that would show up on television, and and you know, the networks would kind of compete. It was basically ABC and CBS that would compete to get the rights to televise Evel Knievel doing some weird jump, and it would be on national TV. It would be in prime time, and yeah, you talk about it during the day, like you're going to watch Evel Knievel kill himself tonight, and you know, that sort of thing. And I can remember being in middle school in the mid 70s, just going, yeah, I'm gonna watch it, but you know, I don't know if I'm a fan or not. But it's like, yeah, you just had to watch it because it was so weird that this guy would be doing this, and that's what he did for a living. He made a lot of money doing this stuff once people knew who he was, and he started wearing a white jumpsuit with red, white, and blue colors, you know, the flag colors on his uniform, and he had a cape, and he had a white helmet with the red, white, and blue on it. So he really kind of adopted that American theme. Well, keep in mind too, this was close to the bicentennial year in 1976, so he really played it up, and and yeah, you know, you used to look forward to some of these crazy things that he did because it would be on the major networks on live TV.
Were you ever scared watching any of them?
Well, no, I wasn't scared uh, to um, watch him get hurt, or I wasn't scared for him. You know, I had a good understanding. Uh, yeah, I was 12, 13 years old at the time, that this guy did this for a living, and it was very real. I mean, it wasn't scripted by any means. Um, and in sports in the 70s did kind of take a different, or it appealed to a different audience. And you know, on a future episode, Andrew, I want to talk about professional boxing, because you don't hear people talk about boxing very much anymore. It's more about the UFC, which is a combination of martial arts, boxing, wrestling, whatever. But back in the 70s, boxing was a big deal. And there'd be like Friday night fights, and every once in a while there'd be a big telecast of Muhammad Ali against somebody. And boxing was a big deal in the 70s, and and just like these weird daredevil stunts by Evel Knievel. So no, I wasn't scared for him. I wasn't scared to see him get hurt. And you know that sick little part of everybody, you know, that watches stuff like that, you know, kind of want to see somebody get hurt, just because, you know, we watch TV because we want to be shocked. We want to be um, we want to be entertained and shocked at the same time. It's kind of like watching pro wrestling to see if anybody bleeds or anyone breaks a bone. That's kind of the same thing with this. Is in boxing, you wanted to see these guys beat each other up and be bloody and all their faces all swollen, and the same thing with Evel Knievel is you wanted to see him make the jump, but you kind of wanted to see him get hurt too. And just kind of that sick little part of that little corner in everybody's body or everyone's mind that yeah, you want to, well, not everyone's like that, but I guess I was. It's like, yeah, I want to tune in and see this guy get hurt. That's and that was the purpose of it. Is the networks would televise this stuff because they made a lot of money in endorsements and advertising and so forth. And Evel Knievel was just one of those guys that that could that could draw people to watch him do these crazy stunts, and whether he made it or he got hurt, millions of people would tune in to watch this stuff. And it was just part of the 70s, Andrew. I don't know if anyone could do that now. Well, there's more than 4 channels to watch now. So it's kind of like the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight on Netflix a few weeks ago. It's like, why did so many people tune into that? I mean, so many people tuned into it. You couldn't even, I guess, some people couldn't even get in, and had to watch, um, not Instagram, but the other one that I can't think of, where people would be showing it on their phone, and you'd have to kind of tune in to watch it that way. But um, TikTok. So people were watching TikTok to see the fight because they couldn't get into Netflix. That's kind of what it was like back in the 70s. Only if you tuned your TV to CBS or ABC, you would see the jump. There was no danger of not seeing the jump. But people just they like to tune in. They wanted to see Mike Tyson or Jake Paul get hurt or bloodied or whatever a few weeks ago when they had the fight on Netflix, and that's kind of the same thing in the 70s. Is you wanted to see Evel Knievel get broken up. That was just part of the whole thing. Even though you wanted to see him make the jump, you kind of wanted to see him get hurt too.
I mean, that totally makes sense. There's people who aren't even NASCAR fans, but if you have NASCAR on, it's like, well, I kind of want to see a car roll, or like I want to see like a crash into the wall or something on fire, like very barbaric, catastrophic stuff. But I definitely get that. It's just action, violence, like that stuff sells. Even if you're not a fan of something, you're like, well, I want to see like I watch that boxing fight because I want to see someone get knocked out.
Yeah.
Anytime I watch UFC, I want to see a knockout and then watch the replay in slow motion. And then I'm sitting there watching this really skilled like fight. Or like, I don't know, the Super Bowl when it's 2 Super Bowls ago, it was the Eagles and the Chiefs. And that was a very smart, well played game. Like very smart. But it was boring because of like how smart like it was played. And it's just like, no, like, come on, let me see some plays, let me see some hard hits, some long passes. So I totally understand that. Like, there's that appeal of watching something because it's live, and then there's also the appeal of watching it because you want to see something that maybe isn't supposed to happen, or you're getting
Well,
away with something that is like you're not supposed to see that every day.
I think the point you're trying to make, Andrew, is you want to see something reckless. You
Yeah.
when you watch the Super Bowl, yeah, you want to see both teams just go with the big plays and the big scores. You don't want to see 2 teams in the Super Bowl play conservative. You want to see both teams be reckless and go for the big plays. And that's why things like this, like Evel Knievel, was was so attractive to people because it was reckless. It was, some people would say, stupid, you know, and it launched other people. I can remember watching this Daredevil show in the 70s where people would like chain themselves to a car, and another car would come screaming at this person, and just almost ready to crush this person between two cars, and the person got out of the handcuffs just in time to avoid getting squished by the other car that was screaming towards him. And and that's, you know, it was kind of all part of what Evel Knievel was about. And then people started coming up with their own stunts and their own daredevil stuff, and you know, where they would jump uh, off a high tower into a pool or something, you know, higher than anybody had ever jumped before, and you know, and all of a sudden people were just on board, Andrew, and doing all these daredevil type things, and I think it's safe to say that Evel Knievel kind of motivated people to try all these weird different things. And of course, TV would grab onto it and show this stuff on TV because it sells. People want to see people doing weird things or dangerous things, like walking across the volcano on a tightrope. I mean, you know, people are just like to be entertained. I guess I'm not going to judge people for watching stuff like that because that's what people did. That's what people did in the 70s. That's what people do now. I mean, it's just it's attractive to see somebody do something really dangerous and practically kill themselves. And I'm sure there have been people that have killed themselves doing stunts. And you know, I can't recall anything off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's happened.
There's a live television feel. Obviously, like then, like you know, Double Dare or became a thing, and like kid shows and Nickelodeon soon after, and then there was shows like or magicians that were like all tied up, in a straight jacket, like in an aquarium or something like each other because it's like I dare you to do this, like I dare like myself to attempt this in front of a live studio audience type deal. So we're gonna get into the stunts. Because I know there's a handful of stunts. If you watched them or not, I didn't see any of this stuff. Obviously, I wasn't in the '70s. Don't even know if Evel Knievel's alive anymore. But let's talk about the big stunts that you remember him doing. And to kind of wrap up today's episode, let's talk about we know why he's known, right? But let's talk about like the details of how he got known.
Well, Evel Knievel actually died on November 30th of of 2007, Andrew. So it's been 17 years since he passed away. You know, just a few days ago, the 30th was on Saturday. Um, so he died at the age of 69. Uh, I, Weirdly enough, he's a native of Montana. You don't hear of too many people that come out of Butte, Montana, but that's where he was from. And I mentioned earlier that he was working at a shop, uh, or he worked for a shop where he learned how to do motocross stunts, and that's kind of where it all started with him. So one time, well, I mentioned the incident in 1967, but it was also and I'll get to it here in just a minute, but it's been 50 years since he tried to jump the canyon in Idaho known as the Snake River Canyon, and that's probably what he's most known for, is when he decided that he wanted to try to jump a canyon. Um, Prior to that, he had a couple of big jumps. In 1973, he jumped 50 demolished cars at the LA Coliseum. Now, you've seen football games at the LA Coliseum, Andrew, and they basically built the ramp from the top of the Coliseum on one end of the football field, and he came down this ramp and jumped over 50 cars and landed safely on the other side and kept going and followed the ramp all the way up to the other side of the Coliseum, way up to the top. So if you ever get a chance to look at that on YouTube, you know, he basically went from the top of the Coliseum down onto the field, jumped over 50 cars, landed and went up to the top of the Coliseum on the other side, and it was just awesome. It's kind of like, my goodness, to not only jump 50 cars, but you went from the top of the Coliseum on one end to the top of the Coliseum on the other end after jumping 50 cars, and it was impressive. And he didn't get hurt on that one. And he rolled the bike back down to the top of the ramp, stopped just short of the 50 cars, and got off the bike and waved at everybody, and was interviewed by whoever, ABC, Frank Gifford or somebody. And he did the same thing with buses. And this one was also 1973 at Kings Island. Not really sure where that is, Andrew, but he jumped 14 buses. And I'm talking Greyhound buses. These are big buses. And when he made this jump, when he landed, he almost lost control of the motorcycle, but you could see where the motorcycle kind of broke apart, but he managed to stay in control of it and get down the ramp safely without falling. And he was interviewed afterwards, and he said he could feel the bike coming apart as he was in midair. As he left the ramp to go over the 14 buses, he said he could feel the bike coming apart, and he wasn't sure what was going to happen when he landed, but the bike stayed together, and he was safe. So, those were a couple of jumps. The one at the LA Coliseum I just told you about, and then the 14 buses at King Island, where he could have gotten really hurt on both of those, but he landed safely. And you saw this stuff, and it kind of motivated you to want to try some of this stuff. And and that's where some of the stuff with Evel Knievel got a little bit dangerous, Andrew. And before I talk about two other jumps that I remember, I want to kind of go sideways here a little bit, because part of the purpose of this show is what I remember about the 70s and how that affected me. Well, we, as kids, Andrew, in the alley and growing up in St. Paul, we had alleys in just about every block. So some of my buddies decided that we should make a ramp that maybe was I don't know, a foot and a half, 2 feet high, and jump over barrels. Um, Back in the day, there was no plastic garbage receptacles. We had metal barrels for our garbages, and some of us thought we should like put a barrel on the ground, lay it down, and or maybe a couple of them, and jump over them with our bicycles. This was all because of Evel Knievel. And so this was going on in the alley behind my house. I personally never tried it, Andrew, because I didn't like pain and I didn't want to get hurt. But I can remember some of my buddies, you know, they would do this jump. They'd maybe only go over one barrel or two barrels. But I remember one kid, he when he landed, um, we just had the ramp to go over the barrel. There was no ramp on the other side of the barrels to come down on. So he went over the barrels and landed hard on his bike, and and fell to the pavement. And I think he scraped his arm pretty good. He didn't break anything or get hurt, but I just thought, yeah, I don't want to do that. So that's the kind of impression that Evel Knievel made on kids. There were toys where you could get Evel Knievel on a motorcycle, and you put this motorcycle on sort of a launch pad, and then wind up, you crank this thing, and then Evel Knievel would take off on the motorcycle and jump over some toy barrels or whatever it was that you got with the kit. So and that sold millions. He sold easily $125 million worth of toys, and most of them were this Evel Knievel motorcycle kit, where you'd get the motorcycle with Evel Knievel on it, and you would wind it up and let it go and see what you could jump over. I mean, you got a ramp, so you could put anything on the table that you wanted Evel Knievel to jump over. And that's, like I said, it sold millions. So that's the kind of impact that Evel Knievel had in the 70s, Andrew, where you could buy the toys, where millions of dollars of toys were made and sold. I think Parker Brothers made the toys, and kids were actually going out and attempting to do jumps in their yard or driveway or in the alley. So yeah, that's the kind of things that were happening because of Evel Knievel in real life.
Did you have that toy?
Never had that toy. Never had that toy. Um, I don't know. Again, I watched Evel Knievel. I wouldn't call myself a mark or a fan of Evel Knievel, but I watched it. But I was never really interested in having any merchandise. I don't know if he had T-shirts or anything like that, because back in those days, that wasn't really a thing yet. Um, but the toys were, but I never had the toy or any. I don't know how many different toys they had of him, but I never had one. Um, Although it'd be interesting now to go back on eBay and see if people had the toys and what they're going for, because they'd probably be worth a little bit of money. Um, the final two jumps that I wanted to talk about, and this one happened in 1974, 50 years ago. It was in September of 1974 where Evel Knievel decided he needed to jump a canyon. Now, originally he wanted to jump the Grand Canyon, um, but the folks, the DNR and the folks that run the Grand Canyon didn't really want to have any part of that. Plus, that would have been a monumental jump. So, Evel Knievel, I don't know how he found it or if somebody made him aware of it, but in Idaho, somewhere in Idaho, there's something called the Snake River Canyon. And so Evel Knievel picked this canyon to do a jump. Now, this canyon is pretty wide, and you're not going to do it with a motorcycle. So Evel Knievel, with the help of others, designed sort of this rocket. And they set up this huge ramp on one end of the canyon, and Evel Knievel got into this rocket. And and they had a countdown. It was almost like something at Cape Canaveral that NASA was sending into space. Okay, so it was this rocket on this huge ramp, and the purpose of it was Evel Knievel was supposed to be launched in this rocket over the canyon to the other side, and in the Snake River down below, which was way down below, and something happened during the launch where the parachute, uh, because they needed a parachute so he could land safely on the other side. The parachute somehow malfunctioned and fired prematurely, Andrew, and so you could see when the rocket took off, the parachute was already coming out. So he got about halfway across, maybe a little more than that, and then the parachute was already out, and he was already drifting downward towards the Snake River, and he did land in the river, and they got him out of there safely. He didn't drown or anything, but because the parachute malfunctioned early or fired early. It was a malfunction, and so he wasn't successful in jumping the canyon. And it wasn't a motorcycle stunt anyway. It was just a stunt with a rocket. But again, part of who Evel Knievel was. It was a daredevil feat. The last thing I remember him doing, and you can ask me questions about this after I finish, in 1976 or 77, Evel Knievel decided that it was in Chicago, Illinois, and it was in 1975. He decided that he was going to jump a pool of sharks. Now, I'm not sure where this actually took place. CBS televised it live, and yeah, it was just a lot of buzz at school that day that, oh, you're going to watch Evel Knievel jump over sharks. Yeah, I hope he falls in and gets eaten by a shark. Wouldn't that be cool? You think they'll show that on TV? Evel Knievel getting eaten by a shark? I don't know. He better hang on to that bike so he doesn't fall off and fall in the shark. So, that was the kind of conversations that were going on all day at school. Was Evel Knievel jumping over this pool of sharks? And this was all inspired by the movie Jaws. Jaws came out in what, 73 or 74? So Evel Knievel decided, well, that'd be a great daredevil stunt, jumping over a pool of sharks. So so this big buildup, I mean, for weeks on TV, tune into Evel Knievel on, Tuesday night, whatever date it was, and see if Evel Knievel could jump a pool of sharks, and you would see these sharks swimming, looking ferocious, and so the time came, and my brother Bruce and I were at the TV, and it was like, they had some preliminary things, where people jumping over this and that, because just like in boxing or pro wrestling or whatever, you had to have like the preliminary stuff. So um finally they got done, and it was like, okay, don't go away, pretty soon Evel Knievel will be here and jump the sharks. And 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 this went on, and they kept taking breaks and commercial breaks, and finally they came on and said, well, we have to report that Evel Knievel won't be here because he is currently hospitalized. And we're going, what? How did this happen? And then it was revealed, Andrew, that Evel Knievel wanted to do a test run earlier in the day, and they showed like this black and white footage of Evel Knievel making the jump. It happened earlier in the day. There was no people, there was no crowds or anything around, but he just wanted to make sure that he could make the jump. So Evel Knievel uh, did the jump, and and landed. He cleared the pool of sharks. He landed, and he crashed and got hurt. So they had to bring him to the hospital, and he was hoping he'd still come back and do the live jump on national TV, but it didn't happen. So Evel Knievel made the jump, and then it was kind of found out later that maybe some of those sharks, I think they were lemon sharks, but they were sharks that even if he had fallen into the water, these sharks probably would not have hurt him. So that's the last thing I remember Evel Knievel doing. Uh, that was the last big thing I can remember him doing it.
Okay, like sorry about that. The phone, we're having some technical difficulty first. I said when they showed that black and white footage, like did he make that practice jump or he missed it? You said.
Yeah, no, he made the practice jump. I'm not sure when you lost me there, but I was talking about how he wanted to jump a pool of sharks. It was in Chicago in 1975 on CBS, and and we waited and waited for him to do this jump, and then finally CBS came clean and said, well, he's not going to be here. He's in the hospital because he did the jump earlier in the day, and they showed black and white footage, and he made the jump. And when he landed on the other side, he crashed and got hurt and had to be hospitalized. It wasn't anything real devastating. I mean, he didn't get real hurt, and he thought he would still be able to do the show, but he wasn't able to do it. So they showed that he indeed made the jump. Um, but we kind of found out years later that the sharks they used weren't sharks they weren't great whites or anything that would really hurt him. They were lemon sharks, and some of these lemon sharks can be dangerous too, but apparently these sharks weren't anything too seriously dangerous. Uh, but the point is he had an idea to do this because of the movie Jaws, and he made the jump. And I'm not sure when the TV show Happy Days decided to emulate that with Fonzie jumping over a shark when they had a trip to California. And a lot of people remember that episode, and that was kind of the end of people watching Happy Days when Fonzie jumped over a shark um, on the show. They also showed Fonzie jumping over 13 barrels in an earlier episode of Happy Days. So they had some Evel Knievel type flavored type things on even on Happy Days because Fonzie was cool with the motorcycle, and so they had to have Fonzie jump over barrels or jump over a shark when he was water skiing, and both of those episodes were motivated and inspired by Evel Knievel. So he inspired a lot of things, Andrew, from kids jumping over barrels in their alley or their driveways and toys and and that's the kind of impression, that's the kind of effect that Evel Knievel had on people in the 70s.
Why did people stop watching Happy Days after that episode?
Well, they thought it was hokey that Fonzie jumped over a shark in California. So Happy Days kind of lost some respect after that.
But like him punching a jukebox and starting the music isn't hokey.
Well, yeah, but that he was the Fonz.
Well,
So,
yeah, so he can do it. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Man, you said something about jump. That kind of reminded me of a question as we wrap up today's episode. You said something about it wasn't exactly what we thought when it was like what kind of sharks were in there. Does stuff slowly start coming out? Like first of all, how do your parents think about this? I know you said your dad wasn't a wrestling fan and they kind of thought weird about certain things. Like, did they just like shake their head whenever you and your brother be talking about Evel Knievel?
well, my brother and I had a living room in the basement of our house in St. Paul. So um, my parents didn't know the stuff that we were watching, and it's not like we were watching anything bad. Um, and I don't know if they knew of Evel Knievel. I'm sure they did. I don't think my dad watched any of that stuff. He just was, my the only thing my dad really watched on TV was country music. Anything relating to country music, the Johnny Cash show, the Glenn Campbell show, the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, whatever. That's what my dad hee haw. That's what my dad liked to watch. He country music was his passion. That's what he watched on TV. He didn't really watch sports. He occasionally would watch the Vikings with us, but that wasn't a big deal to him. It was pretty much uh, television was for country music, and that was it.
All right. So yeah, we'll wrap up this week's episode with my final question of like you mentioned that sharks weren't really what we thought. So what was stuff that you found out after the fact of Evel Knievel? Like, the whole moon landing. There's a lot of conspiracies of like how that was just made to look pretty for TV. Was there anything that came out after the fact that kind of changed your mind and your point of view from what you thought of him as a kid?
Well, not really, because the thing about the sharks I just found out doing research uh, a couple of weeks ago. So um, the fact is that he made the jump, whether they were deadly sharks or not. Uh, it doesn't really matter. He made the jump, and he didn't fall into the water and with sharks swimming around him but not attacking him. That didn't happen. So it doesn't really matter. What Evel Knievel did was real, and he made a lot of money doing it. He was the first well known or superstar, I guess, world known uh, or nationally known, world known Daredevil. I mean, he was the first. Nobody had ever done or seen anything like that prior to Evel Knievel or after Evel Knievel. He had a son named Robbie that carried on his dad's legacy by doing jumps and stuff. And I think he's also passed away. But I really didn't follow what Robbie Knievel did for a living or any of his jumps or anything. But Evel Knievel, I did. Evel Knievel was the first Daredevil that I ever remember seeing, and it was fun to watch. Whether I was a true fan of him or not doesn't really matter because I did what millions of other Americans did, Andrew, is I tuned in and watched. Whether I wanted to see him make it or not is irrelevant because the point of the whole thing was that you tuned in and watched and that Evel Knievel made a lot of money on endorsements and doing these jumps and television contracts and the TV stations made millions of dollars on commercials, and that's what it was all about. It was an idea that Evel Knievel came up with, and he made millions of dollars doing it. And and to this day, he's the most famous daredevil that ever performed in front of an audience.
Did you ever want to meet him when you were a kid?
Not really. Again, I wasn't really a fan. Um, I was more uh, as far as performing and entertaining, I was more into pro wrestling, even though I thought pro wrestling was real in the 70s um, before all that. That's a different topic for a different time. But what Evil Knievel did was real. Um, it wasn't scripted. I mean, there's no way you could script that. Jumping over buses or cars or sharks or whatever the case is, and going high in the air and then landing on the other side on a motorcycle with no protection. You know, you can't script that. It was real, and that's why people watched.
And definitely people were entertained. And we hope that you're entertained every week when you listen to That 70s Pod here on YouTube. We thank our sponsors that I'll add at the end of this episode. Thank you again, Bryan, for your time this week. Hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. And I hope that you're enjoying the holidays. Evel Knievel, that was such a unique character. Such a unique, I mean, people still know him, right? It's like I said, Elvis. Even if you've never seen it, you can't name like a movie or song. Like I know Elvis. People know Evel Knievel, and it's mentioned in Family Guy. It's mentioned in things all over, and that's something so unique about the '70s that '70s had such a lasting impact. Politics, music, whatever the case is, like even if you don't have any idea of what they look like or what they did, like, oh, I know Bob Marley, like I know this, like just the image of people became such a big deal in the '70s. I feel like Evel Knievel is a really good example of that. Um, all right, that's episode 31, Evel Knievel. Unless you have any final words for it, I'm signing off from Orlando.
Well, I think the best way to say it, Andrew, is people like Evel Knievel or Muhammad Ali or uh, Terry Bradshaw. I mean, these people were larger than life, and we were very limited on media in the 70s. We only had CBS, ABC, and NBC, and then whatever your local affiliate was, wherever you lived. That was it. That was your media in the 70s. So these characters would come out of nowhere like Evel Knievel, and they would be larger than life. Like Andre the Giant. The first time I saw him, it was like, holy cow. I mean, he burst on the scene in the mid 70s, and he stayed relevant for decades, and that's what television did in the 70s. Is it made people larger than life. That's all I got.
Oh, okay. That is to wrap it up. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you again for your time. Thank you. I want to seriously, if you guys haven't listened to last week's episode, Thanksgiving, go listen to that because it's just thankful for what we have, thankful who we have. And speaking of larger than life, saying a prayer for you every day. Definitely thankful to have God in my life and that we have these moments and that your memory can still recall all this stuff from the '70s with research or not. It's always fun doing all that. I mean, because like people always talk about like, oh wow, how do you remember that for like my life? and you're remembering stuff in the 70s. I hope that I could help you jog some memories that you maybe never thought of before until I ask a question. So definitely grateful. Enjoy doing this podcast. And next week, I mean, like I said, we're gonna have a Christmas episode coming up. Still got a special guest Q&A. I know you want to do boxing. We're going to do the Olympic team. We're going to do like maybe we'll talk about Jaws one day. But like that's what's always fun. It's just always a mystery. Just like I feel like watching Evel Knievel, you never knew what you were going to get, but you were going to be talking about it and going to be entertained. I never know what I'm going to get when I press record for you. We appreciate you guys listening so much. We appreciate you are sponsoring us, and I guess I'm going to say it one more time. What was our catchphrase? How did we end our episodes back then? Was it just peace?
Peace, my friends. Thank you.
Peace, my friends. Thank you. Good night.
What a jump! Evel's riding the amazing sky cycle. That gyro power sends him over 100 feet at top speed. Loop-de-loop, and he's not through yet. Into the dragster. Evel's super sprint car with built-in drag chute to slow him down. What a hope! And now, the sky cycle. That daredevil death-defying supersonic skyplane on wheels. And here he is on the super cool chopper bike with the power that can really rip. He's sensational. He's Evel Knievel. He's a knockout. He's ideal. He's ideal.
Listen to those commercials, such fun. It reminds me when we did an episode back where I was listening to the Burger King, McDonald's commercials. Just those commercials back in the 70s, kind of with that muffled sound, that Evel Knievel toy. I'm really surprised that he did not have a toy. I swore when he would talk back in the day, having Stretch Armstrong and G.I. Joe, that we were watching that 70s show one time, and they had the Evel Knievel that they were really trying to ramp up over like a car or something, or the garage door, and just crash right into the garage door. And I think Kelso was playing with that. And it's just fun listening to those his stories every weekend. Thank you once again, Brian, and thank you guys for listening. Speaking of commercials, we also have our commercials. That's with our sponsors, as I mentioned before, KingLineNutrition.com. That's KingLineNutrition.com. Go there and get the best snacking ever using the promo code Lockhart, Lockhart. That's my last name, Lockhart, for 15% off, 20% off. I guess it depends what you're buying. Edible cookie dough, protein mixes, real cookie dough, I guess, if you just want to make it like that. Some people just want to scoop it out like a cookie butter. They have so much random, unique flavors. Frosted animal crackers, I remember that was or frosted animal cookies, animal crackers. Yeah, like that got my attention right away. Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and there's also seasonal flavors. With the holidays coming up, we got that December, Christmas time. Go check out the flavors at KingLineNutrition.com. The promo code Lockhart, you can find in the description below here on YouTube. We thank you for listening on YouTube. Sponsors left and right, but you're our best sponsors. You're our best advertisers. When you subscribe and you share the link below, spread this out through social media, text message. If someone's like, hey, you remember this thing? Or Andrew and Brian are pretty cool guys. You can follow us, subscribe, share, like, comment on YouTube at That 70s Pod. That's That 70s Pod with Bryan Lee. And our last sponsor of the week is GodlyFatherApparel.com. It is getting cold outside. Florida, Wisconsin, no matter what the case is, it's just getting a little chilly. So you need a t-shirt, you can get a hoodie, and you can get 15% off with Lockhart15. That's Lockhart15, Lockhart15. That's Lockhart15 for 15% off. Pretty sure when I ordered, I had it on top of another code. So load that Lockhart15 on another promotion going on. They still have some Black Friday or Cyber Monday sales and some Christmas sales coming. GodlyFatherApparel.com with your best t-shirts, hats, hoodies, and I want to say there's a fanny pack. It might be sold out, but go check it out. It's a weird, unique way how to spread your faith. Instead of just a Bible verse, they have pictures, they have tie-dye, they have, I guess it's not weird, it's just a unique way, and it's really fun. Instagram, SCVW Action Figure, and Andrew Always Acting is where you can find Brian and myself social media. And I would also just go watch some 70s. I said last week, eat some food for Thanksgiving and watch some football. Listen to some 70s music. I was cooking the other night and I was listening to 1978 radio mix, and I sent it over to Brian, and his first response was, man, 78 had some good music. And like me not even being born in 1978, I knew all those songs. YouTube is like a time machine. It's like the only time machine we have. And I'm glad that you can listen to us here on That 70s Pod on YouTube. We hope you have a good night, and we'll catch you next week for episode 32 with a unique topic, but I won't share now. We're going to have fun next week, and I hope you guys enjoy your week. Check out our sponsors, and take care. Peace. Now, you know.